everybody, and welcome to a brand new spoiler review episode of Ahsoka from the
Geek Buddies.
Hey! Well, this is going to be a short review because nothing happened in this episode, so no
filler.
It's just all filler.
Filler.
Right? My gosh, do we have a lot to talk about from this episode. There's so much to dive into here in the world between worlds with Anakin and Ahsoka going to different spots in time in their relationship, and also the stuff going on with Jacen and Hera, finding out more about Jacen's abilities. And at the end, we get that Gandalf AHSOKA the White moment where she is communing with a Purrgil, and we're off to find Morgan Elsbeth and the crew there who have Sabine and are trying to bring back Thrawn. So much happened in this episode, both action-wise, but also conversation, philosophical, concept-wise from Star Wars that I thought was fantastic. I'm going to break it all down here for you. And let's introduce ourselves. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
I am Michael Vogel. I'm a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm a television actor and an animation writer, where you can see some of our current work right now on YouTube every weekend with the third season of Strawberry Shortcake, Bury in the Big City.
Bang, bang. But let's talk about, let's get into a Shadow Warrior, written and directed by Dave Filoni. You know, when last we left Ahsoka, World Between Worlds, Anakin had shown up. All of us, just like with our Marok theories, had all these theories about who Anakin could be, what this could mean, what this could be all about. And the show, just like it did with Marok, was just straightforward about what's happening here. And we dive into all of this that went on between them and concept-wise. But Michael, first off, what are your overall thoughts here? Episode 5, Shadow Warrior. This is the one that Filoni wanted to direct. What did you think overall of this episode?
I mean, it maybe is one of my best episodes of Star Wars ever. I mean, it hit every note. But I think I want to take a minute to just give credit to Dave Filoni and Lucasfilm for something that I think last night's episode was a payoff of something that was a long time in the works. And as an animation person, I want to give credit to Star Wars for being the first major brand that went ahead and just said, around the time of Rogue One, animation is canon.
Yeah.
All this stuff that's been going on, everything that was going on between the Clone Wars episodes and the Rebels episodes, like, this isn't just fun kid stuff that you could look at if you wanted, but it doesn't really matter. Like, by having, like, General Syndulla mentioned in Rogue One, by having Chopper show up, like, they made a statement that the animated stuff is a part of this bigger universe. And obviously, with Ahsoka showing up in Mando and everything they've done, that's continued to be the case.
Yeah.
And to watch what they did last night with Anakin and Ahsoka coming face to face in live action, seeing the Clone Wars fully realized, seeing Padawan child Ahsoka in live action, like, and what that meant, not just for Ahsoka's journey, but what it meant to see this version of Anakin. Like, it just was firing on all cylinders. And I think that the smartest thing they did was making animation canon before any other major brand would do it. And it all paid off, for me at least, last night. And just the ending of that episode, to me, felt like we were diving into a new era of Star Wars in an amazing way. So I was clearly pleased with last night's episode.
Shannon, do you share the pleased feeling that Michael Vogel has about this episode? Your thoughts overall?
I don't think I'm quite as pleased as Vogel, but yes, I did really, really enjoy it. And the thing that I really enjoyed the most about it was probably Hayden Christensen, as someone who was not a fan of his from the prequels. And, you know, you can chalk that up to any number of reasons, in that George Lucas has never been known as the most actor-friendly director, the fact that they were working on a majority of blue screen and green screen sets, and also the fact that he's been able to age a little bit. And, you know, generally, especially in the arts, you get older, you do get better. Like, you might lose one thing, but you gain a little bit more. And I think when he was quoted as saying that he did go back and watch some of the Clone Wars, I think that really bleeds into his performance, because watching them together, especially when we get younger Ahsoka, watching them together, that's one of those times that I'm like, God, I love that they are making all this animation canon. I would love to see more of this. I would love to see Anakin and Ahsoka together and throw in Ewan McGregor as well. And like, that would just please my heart to no end. But yeah, I mean, last night was really kind of magical. I of course have my little quibbles with one particular cast member, which you all know what I'm going to say.
We're gonna get to it.
I'll belabor the point. I already got critiqued on our group text.
That's fine. You know, you got to write your opinion.
But yes, I did really enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Andor is my Star Wars, right? But this was Star Wars. This was Star Wars, and this is what got people into Star Wars, what made people love Star Wars from A New Hope on, is this combination of philosophical concept, magical reality, and lessons and things you take away from it, life lessons. And I thought what we got here was really incredible to have Anakin teaching Ahsoka his final lesson and foreshadowing it by saying, you got to finish your training. You got to finish your training. And her arrogance a little bit, or hubris, of course, because she's older now, saying like, there's nothing you can teach me. I'm good. And him saying, no, there's still a little bit more here. And it is at the end, it's to let go of all the pain and guilt and anger and frustration of things from the past and focus on the present, not live in the future fear of Thrawn or live in the past of Anakin. Focus on the present, go with the flow, be confident that you'll be able to handle it. And the best of you will be coming out of you to deal with this stuff, and care for your friends, love your friends. And so there was something that was really positive that came out of this, but also there were some fantastic clips of lightsaber battles, like mini lightsaber battles. Having Anakin swinging that thing like he did in the prequels was great to see. But their conversations, especially the Siege of Mandalore, all of that. And then boom, the stuff with Jacen and Hera, to me, Star Wars also laying the groundwork possibly for a Rangers of the New Republic series coming. So doing the franchise work that they're supposed to do, but also really pushing the storylines further and making you care about these characters further. And even if you haven't seen Clone Wars or Rebels, I think there was enough here for you to finally feel like there was a payoff of you watching the show kind of blind and seeing the connection of these characters overall. And I thought Filoni did a masterful job directing this episode. And Kevin Kiner's score, sweet Mary Mother
girl,
God, did it come to play in this episode for sure. So the way we're going to break this thing down is we're just going to talk about storylines, and that's going to be it. That's what we'll do, 3 sections, and that's what we're going to do this review. So let's start right off the bat with the stuff that I was mentioning here a little bit. Ahsoka and Anakin, they meet in the world between worlds. Anakin's telling her that he's got to finish her training. She's saying she doesn't know what to learn. He's saying, well, you're not too old to learn some new lessons. They have a lightsaber, and he gives him her a choice, live or die. She seems to get the best of him, and then he cuts out the platform from under her. She falls down to become young Ahsoka in one of the first battles of the Clone Wars. I think this is Ryloth. Some people thought it was 10th, and I wasn't sure. Teth. And so all of that is
Ryloth.
It's right. Okay, fine. It's Ryloth. We see her deal with that situation and kind of understanding what's going on. Anakin running by her, seeing all the smoke and everything, seeing the battles going down. And then later we go to a different time, which is the Siege of Mandalore with her and Anakin and them having a conversation about the legacy of him, death and destruction, generational trauma. Do I have to carry it forward? Does this have to be my legacy? What am I going to teach my Padawan? Is it just death and destruction and all of this? And Anakin saying like, all of me is inside of you. You are a reflection of me, and this lineage is the legacy. And Ahsoka essentially saying, I want to break this pattern. I want to find a way out. And then they have a final battle there in the Siege of Mandalore. And then boom, right out into the world between worlds. She's older now. They finish off their battle, and she gets the best of him when it looks like she isn't going to get the best of him, and puts that red lightsaber closer to Anakin's throat and then doesn't kill him and says, I choose life. And he says to her, there's still hope for you yet. And then essentially sends her back up. So, Michael, a fantastic combination of scenes here to give us a real strong connection to the relationship that we all know we saw in the Clone Wars and Rebels, and seeing more what we're going to see from Ahsoka here and Anakin. What did you think about what we got here in this episode?
Well, so a couple things. One, echoing Shannon's earlier statement, when we saw Hayden Christensen at the end of last week's episode as Anakin, and he looked a little smooth. I was like, all right, like, you know what? Like, it is what it is. I'm excited that we're going to get to see them in this episode. And I'm just going to put up with the fact that the weird uncanny valley de-aging thing is going to be what it's going to be. And then we got to this episode and I thought he looked great.
Yes, he did.
I don't know what the big difference was between the end of last week's episode and the work they did in this episode. And look, it's not always perfect, but it was significantly better than I thought it was going to be based on the ending of episode 4. And for that, I was grateful. And as Shannon said, his performance, seeing Hayden Christensen play Anakin the way that I have come to appreciate Anakin based on the Clone Wars, and to see that guy in real life, like, it just hit all the right notes for me. It was so good. He did such a great job that it just really got me. And the two of them really got me. And then seeing these battles and these moments from Clone Wars Animated kind of come to life in these kind of Force visions. Also, just as a Clone Wars, like, I think they did a nice enough job that if you weren't a Clone Wars person, you got to see these snippets of the Clone Wars and got to see young Ahsoka with Anakin, and you got the context of what you needed. But if you are a Clone Wars fan, like, this was just a fucking gift. Also, and I've seen a lot of people mention this on Twitter, we know from the animation that Ahsoka's a Padawan and really young, but boy, seeing how young she is in live action, you're like, this is brutal. Like, this, this is brutal. Like, this kid was raised in a war. Like, it really hits a little bit different, which I think is also really good, because I think and I've seen a lot of people talk about this, and I'm curious to see what you guys both think in more detail about it, but kind of what it is that Ahsoka learns, what it is that Anakin is teaching Ahsoka here. And, you know, I think that Filoni very wisely isn't going to hit you over the head with it. It's kind of written in a way that it is open to a level of interpretation. And I think that's what's really interesting about this journey for Ahsoka is that she... And this has been, you know, it's something that came up in Clone Wars Animated. She mentioned something to Rex at the end, but that she really struggles with is that she was raised to be a fighter. Yeah, like, soldier. Jedi are supposed to be peacekeepers. And from the moment that she was a Padawan, she was raised to be in battle, to be in war by the greatest Jedi of all time, who then went on to become the biggest monster in the galaxy. Right. And so she has this reticence, and I think what she's been dealing with is this reticence of, when he says you can live or die, it's fight or be killed. That's the way that it's interpreted. Like, that's the way he kind of presents it to her, and she goes, I'm not going to fight you. Like, she doesn't want to fight. But her entire history has been one of fighting, of killing people in a war that ultimately was a pointless war that didn't mean anything because Palpatine arranged the whole thing. And then seeing that whole Siege of Mandalore sequence, you know, she's the one that kind of brought a bunch of clones to Mandalore, and then they never left, and that led to the Empire taking over Mandalore and the Night of a Thousand Tears. So she's probably got some guilt there too. Like, she, you know, it's what Baylan Skoll says to her in episode 4 of Ahsoka, where he's like, you and your master just leave a legacy of death and destruction. And I think she feels that way, and she doesn't know how to move on. She's like, I can either do nothing, or I can fight and become like Anakin. And so even in the moment when he says to her, he's like, if you don't fight, you die. And he runs off into the sun, and we see that amazing shot of like Anakin turning into Darth Vader back to Anakin. It's like, his path is one that just leads to more death and destruction. Yeah. And then to get to the end where she then says to him, she goes right up to that edge. She's battling with him. She gets the better of him. She's got the red lightsaber. You can see like her eyes kind of going Sith. And then she pulls back and goes, oh, I choose life. That choosing life doesn't mean I have to fight you. Right. That the Jedi kind of got caught up in this thing where we either have to fight or we're going to get defeated. And Anakin has always been this guy that's like, look, you either fight or you die. And Ahsoka's like, oh, there's another option. And by the way, it's the same option that Luke used to redeem his dad in Return of the Jedi. Right, right. Like that this is classic Star Wars, which is everyone is going to tell you to be the hero. You got to kill the bad guy. You got to slay the dragon. You got to be aggressive. And Luke at the end of Return of the Jedi, the way that he brought Vader back, brought Anakin back from the dark side was to say, I'm not going to fight you. I'm a Jedi like my dad was. Like, I'm not going to do this. And Ahsoka has been struggling with that same thing, living in the shadow. And she gets to the end of this and says, oh, living doesn't mean I have to fight. Living means I'm going to actually live. And then Anakin's like, hey, you might be okay. And it was just like, it was poetry, man. It was poetry. It rhymes. It was George Lucas at his best. And just the visuals of everything. You know, I mentioned the Anakin to Darth Vader shot, but just seeing them battle in the world between worlds, the way it sort of went into the flashbacks, like, this is weird Jedi Force shit at its best. Like, this is Luke in the tree. Like, this is like all the stuff. To your point, Andor is the best of grounded Star Wars, but this is the best of all of that hero with 1,000 faces, Joseph Campbell mythology stuff that kind of is the bread and butter of Star Wars that gets us all super excited. And I think they just did a masterful job of weaving everything we know of their journey into this place where Ahsoka needs to be right now.
Yeah, Shannon, a lot of people were worried how they were going to use the world between worlds. You know, it's always been the fear of a lot of Star Wars fans that they're going to cherry pick and save certain people and change storylines because fans love certain characters and don't want them to die and whatever and all of that. But I thought this was a great use of the world between worlds. And we don't even know if this is actually what happened, right? Because it could just be that because she got knocked out, she's in her head, she's drowning, whatever's going on there underwater. None of this could have happened in actual reality. But the fact that it's kind of nebulous, I think makes it even more connectable as a universal thing. Because how many of us have had a dream that kind of affects us and we change who we are or we change something about our behavior because of a really potent, powerful dream, because we go through some stuff, we're confronting stuff. A lot of people interpret dreams and so be like, oh, this is what it means. And this is what you're grappling with. And you've got to come to terms with this stuff. And certainly here in the world between worlds, in these scenes, we see Ahsoka going all the way back to her past to come back to her present, to learn the final lesson for herself and let that stuff go. What did you think about their interactions and where we went in the world between worlds with Ahsoka and Anakin?
Well, I think we talked about last week how for the uninitiated, the world between worlds kind of seems like Jedi heaven. But I think more accurately, it might be Jedi purgatory.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like you're kind of at a crossroads here. Are you gonna go left? Are you gonna go right? The way that this was shot, because there were a limited number of theaters across the nation that were showing this on the big screen, and I think it was only playing at the Grove here in LA, and those tickets were gone like that. But watching this on my television, like the way that especially with the world between worlds section, this felt like it was filmed for the big screen. Yeah, like you just have this wide open, just expanse of this, just this beautiful, again, space purgatory, these giant sort of ethereal bridges and everything. And the way that when Ahsoka and especially Anakin would walk, you would hear this echo throughout everything. Like I can only imagine that probably looked and sounded incredible in a big theater. This would have been a great one to watch with just a giant group of people.
Oh my God, I'm sure,
But yeah, I mean, you know what? Again, for all of the critiques that were kind of leveled at Hayden Christensen's performance in the prequels, like you can never argue that he didn't look good with a lightsaber, and he still looks just awesome. Like watching the interaction between the two of them where she says, "You look the same," and he says, "You look old." Like, I was like, God, that would have been a great, great crowd moment. My wife went, I was like, that's what I was able. That's what I was able. The water that I was able to squeeze from that stone. But just the whole section of them dueling back and forth, and that moment where he says, I didn't teach you everything, and the moment that you realize, like, oh my God, it's little Ahsoka. She's taking out her green lightsaber. Oh my God, it's prequel, it's Clone War era Anakin with the armor and the shorter hair. And oh my God, was Tamora Morrison not in LA around this time? Yeah, like he was able to make it to a booth, but especially in the aftermath of that battle, and all those soldiers have the cloth over their face. I'm like, man, you were able to get him for Obi-Wan for that one shot. I really wish we could have got him for a shot or two for this. But it was just really, really satisfying, and getting to see this relationship in live action where Anakin kind of sort of makes a joke. Not really. Yeah. And Ahsoka saying, like, how can you joke right now? And him saying, what do you want? What's going to help you? Do you want me to be super serious? Right. Here is the reality of what we're doing. As you already said, John, Jedi are peacekeepers. but Ahsoka was born into war.
Yeah. So
Watching go from her green lightsaber to her two blue lightsabers. One of the critiques that I would get, and I was like, I think this is probably just leaning into the dreamlike quality of this. I was like, Mandalore and Ryloth look really similar.
Well, yeah, the limits of what they can do. It's a fair point, Jim.
I mean, I saw a couple of those Mandalorian palaces, but I'm like, maybe you got to change the color of them. But again, watching Ahsoka take out those, the Mandalorians, again, just super, super satisfying. And then as we see the flickers, those flickers of Anakin to Vader were just brilliant. Yeah. And when Ahsoka, when they get back and she's basically saying like, no, I'm done fighting, I fully expected him to turn around and be Vader. But I think emotionally it was so much more resonant to have it be Anakin, to have it be the Anakin that she never saw, the one that she only heard about, that we see the Sith eyes back and forth. So yeah, it was just really, really nice. And again, the only other critique that I would give for the section, because she is choosing life. Yeah. When she wakes up in the water, to me, she should have gone to the surface on her own strength. That the moment that we see the X-Wing pilot dive in, I'm like, I get it. But at the same time, I'm like, no, I mean, to me, this is like that Sandra Bullock gravity moment. It's like, no, I'm choosing to do this. I'm saving myself here. Right. That being said, the section was still terrific.
So Force Ghost Clooney is what you're saying. You're rejecting Force Ghost Clooney.
Force Ghost Clooney.
Yeah. We have to see Anakin under the water and being like, hey, get up.
I agree. I agree with you on both counts. So that I did almost expect Vader to come out of the shadows when they come out of the smoke when they got back to the world between worlds. But I also agree with you that I think having it stay Anakin, but like that Sith Anakin was the smarter move. But I like how even in his vocal, in the line that he had, I forget what the line is, but they used that sort of vocoder. Like his voice was right on the edge of Vader. Like it all had the hints of it. And I just think the way they layered all those pieces in was so effective. Like they really just nailed it.
Yeah, I loved these sequences. This is where I exist in Star Wars, is the conversations about life and the experiences of life. This is what always attracts me to Star Wars. And when you get good actors to really bring these things to life, it's a feast. It's a feast for your eyes and for your brain. And I love that, and Ariana Greenblatt is who played the young Ahsoka. For those of you who don't know, she is a young Gamora. She's also the daughter of America Ferrera and Barbie. She's in 65, that Adam Driver film, which I don't know many people saw. And she's apparently in that Borderlands that's probably never going to come out at this point. A film based on the video game as well. So a very strong, capable actress coming in and playing younger versions of two iconic characters in Gamora and Ahsoka and making them unique and doing really great work. I mean, her with the clones, they're seeing the death, the results of their war, so you see the sadness, see the connection, see the love that she has for the clone soldiers there. And Rex coming in and having that, as Shannon said, he jumped into a booth to Morrison and having that quick exchange, I thought was cool. The Mandalorian Super Commandos were cool to see in live action as well in those sequences, but it was about the conversations with her and Anakin and this idea of the legacy. I think that's where I really was just feeling that, because as a society, we're talking more and more about generational trauma, about how much of what my parents went through, my older siblings went through, my grandparents went through, do I have to carry into my own life? How much of their anger am I shaped by? Their frustration, their pain, am I shaped by? Can I walk my own path, or must I carry them? And you mentioned, Michael, the cave in Dagobah. I think that's a great connection here too. And also Daisy Ridley. I keep forgetting to mention that I think the cave stuff in Last Jedi, when we're seeing the reflections of her, I think that's all connected to World Between Worlds as well. Those are all kind of mystical things that have branches within the world.
Before J.J. Abrams messed it up, but yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, fair point. I thought you liked the movie. But anyway, the what Luke sees is himself inside of Vader's helmet, right? When he defeats that Vader in the tree, that's the same thing that happens here. Anakin telling Ahsoka, you are everything I am. You are a reflection of me, but she's choosing in the end to walk her own path, understanding that, but not carrying on the legacy of him. And at the moment where they get into the fight, The second fight is because she says, yeah, you are more powerful than everybody else, but you're also more dangerous. And that's something that I didn't factor into. And that causes the final battle between them. I love that they intersperse the Darth Vader breathing when she's falling into the Clone War, into that younger section of herself. And then later when they're having the final battle in the War Between Worlds, as he comes out of that smoke and he's Vader, Anakin Vader. And I saw someone online pontificate this, and I didn't think about this, that he could be playing the father from the Mortis trilogy, as some people speculated, because he is playing both the light and the dark. He is the balance in a way. And so it's maybe a subtle reference to that, because he's able to access both in teaching this final lesson to Ahsoka, which is let go of all the guilt and anger and pain from the past. It happened. It was there. Don't carry it and make the same mistakes I did as Vader and use it to like destroy worlds and kill millions of people and indulge in my pain and anger. Find a better path out of this whole thing. And so when she chooses life, I think that's what that final lesson is. You asked us the question, Michael, earlier, what does she learn? I think she learns to put that in its proper place and move on from it, because so many of us are caught up in our guilt and pain and anger of the mistakes we made in the past, rather than letting that go, as we would tell one of our own best friends to let go of stuff from that, because we know the better of them. We have to find the better in ourselves. And I think that's what he was trying to say. And I hear your point, Shannon, but I think having someone come in to help her, that's a way of kind of choosing life. Is like, it's okay to need help. It's okay to find strength with others. It's okay to care and love others. And the Ahsoka we get, which we'll get to when we come out of that, is a much more open, calm, peace, loving Ahsoka. It's the Ahsoka people were waiting to see, and over the first 4 episodes, and we got it here finally as Ahsoka the White. And I thought that was really, really great. Michael, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, just one thing. As you were talking, I was thinking about, and I think there's probably 2 ways to look at it. Everything you're saying about generational trauma, 100% agree with. It's something we talk about a lot more. It's most Disney animated movies right now. Like, go watch Encanto. Like, let's dive in. But I think there's 2 ways to look at it. And as you were talking, I was thinking about it. You know, Baylan Skoll, like I said, says to Ahsoka, you and your master's legacy is death and destruction. And Ahsoka is like, says to Anakin when they're at the siege on Mandalore, she's like, like, if I'm everything you are, doesn't that mean? And he's like, oh, is that what we're talking about? Like, he's like, oh, Vader, is that, we're talking about the Vader stuff now?
You gotta deal with that now? Yeah.
But I think that given that this is a complete Anakin, this is an Anakin post Return of the Jedi. Anakin in his final moments chose life.
Exactly.
Like, he chose Luke. Right. He chose Luke's life, and he destroyed the Emperor. Like, yes, Darth Vader was the worst. Darth Vader's you can't ever forgive Darth Vader for all the horrible things he did. Right. But in the final moments of his life, he chose life over death and destruction. He made that sacrifice. And so I think part of what he's also saying to Ahsoka is, hey, if you're everything I am, learn the final lesson. Right. Like, yeah, the final lesson for me was the last, 10 minutes of my life, but you can choose that now. As my Padawan, you can be better than me. You can learn that lesson now, and you can take that with you where you go, and you can be rest assured that, like, yeah, you have everything in me. You have the potential for destruction. You have the potential. You're powerful enough. I trained you. You could be the worst of the worst, but you could also be the best of the best. And my life was complete thanks to Luke. And I'm trying to impart that wisdom to you.
Yeah, and I think the final thing, and we should move on, is remember, he didn't choose her. And I think this is the really interesting thing about the relationship. She was foisted upon him by Yoda when he thought she was going to be Kenobi's Padawan. She was foisted upon him. So he crafted her, he molded her and into his image, begrudgingly initially, and then eventually, of course, they were a great twosome. But in the end, she found her strength to walk away from him and walk away from the Jedi Order. And in this moment here at the end, she chooses life to walk away from the negative lessons of his past and embrace the positive final lesson of him turning towards Luke, Mike. So you make an excellent point there for sure. So I love that as their unique relationship as Padawan and Master for sure. All right, well, let's take a quick break and we'll get into the rest of the episode and all the stuff that's going on with Jacen and the best X-Wing fighter we've seen in quite a while, CARSON TEVA, right after this. I love that one. All right, let's get into what happens on Cetos, because we start off on Cetos. It's Hera there with CARSON TEVA and the crew of X-Wing fighters, of course, having recovered from being caught up in a hyperspace jump. They are investigating, trying to figure out what happened here. I thought we were going to get Hera doing the Prince Humperdinck, reliving the battle. That happens later, which we'll get to. But she's just kind of figuring out what's going on. And CARSON TEVA is there. They say they can't find anything. We see Huyang holding the helmet of Sabine, which is, man, that moment broke me. I had to stop the episode for a couple of minutes because this was such wonderful voiceover acting from David Tennant and great acting by who was ever manning the controls of that Huyang robot. So well done. I don't know if it's CG or the controls, but either way, it works so well. Talking about, I told them to stay together. They never listen. And I think he was echoing 25,000 years of experience with the Jedi by saying they never listen. It was so great. But then we see Jacen start to tap into his force. So my issues with him last episode of the I Have a Bad Feeling, I guess I was wrong, because here he is. He is Jedi. He is force sensitive. And he
say it again, John. Say it again so everyone in the back can hear you. Say it again.
So now I can put that in its proper context, which I'm happy about. And so here he said he's telling Hera, who's of course doing the mom thing, like, okay, hold on a second, Jace. Hold on. Let me deal with the adults are talking type of thing. But Jason's like, no, mom, slow shit down. Listen, hear the lightsabers. And it's coinciding with the waves crashing. And she's not force sensitive, but I think that was a little bit of a meditation thing. Like if you just kind of calm it down, you can hear the thing that you're supposed to be listening to. And so you see that he gets her there. And so they hear all that. And then they get the location of where Ahsoka is. They eventually find her. But we also hear from CARSON TEVA that there's issues going on from the New Republic. They want to find out what's going on in this mission. They're coming now to confront Hera and what's going on there. And Hera has a nice little comeback with that. And then we hear about Senator Organa being someone who is playing a little bit of defense from the New Republic, keeping them at bay for as long as you can to give them more time and all of this. And then, of course, we see Mon Mothma there and having the back and forth with that. So let's just stop there. Shannon, your thoughts overall on what we got here with Hera and Jacen, CARSON TEVA and his like, oh yeah, I guess he's a Jedi. Fine, let's go do this. What are your thoughts on all of this before we get to them picking up Ahsoka?
The melancholic nature of Huyang in that first moment when we see him holding Sabine's Mandalorian helmet. I'm like, man, that is great. And we don't get any of that from Hera, which I mean, I'm kind of like, God, this is like, I get that they're not there, but there were bad guys there, a giant ring ship, unlike anything you've ever seen has flown past. You seem very calm for all of this. And granted, you're a general, you're a mom, sure, you have to keep your cool, but I feel like my continuing issues with Mary Elizabeth Winstead in this role is she's just a little flat for me. Like I think George Lucas's classic direction, a faster and more intense, could potentially be very useful here. And I know folks in the comments in the past said, well, she's actually the same age. And it's like, it's not an age thing. It's a vibe thing.
Yeah.
Like she's just a little too young and a little too calm. Like, I feel like you have to ratchet that up a little bit. I think with the exception of episode 2, she's kind of playing this one level. And because she is such a skilled performer, I have to think that this has to be a dropping of the ball on the director's side, just because she is so consistent throughout her career that I'm like, it's just not, I don't know why it is just not connecting right now. I was one of those who actually liked Jacen's I Have a Bad Feeling, Mom, last week. And I thought it connected brilliantly this week. That moment where he says, like, not the waves, like the lightsabers, like, it was just, and I think, again, this was sort of like a framing of the shot, like how she's standing there. I think even though I loved CARSON TEVA's reaction, okay, I think this was, and this is just the Rebels fan in me, I think there was an opportunity that they missed to talk about Kanan for just a second. Like I kind of wish that Hera, instead of standing with him, I wish she'd gotten on one knee as a mom. And she can't hear this, but she's looking at her son and this thing that she has feared, that he's going to end up like his dad. Now it's time to embrace it. and her saying like, no, I can't hear it, Jacen, but I see that you can. I think that would have had some dramatic resonance. Even though, yes, the CARSON TEVA, oh, okay, like that is a great fun moment. When she and Huyang are in the cockpit again, it's just a little flat. Like it's like, well, they couldn't have just vanished. They don't just disappear. It's like, there's just something missing here for me. But when the moment that we hear that force sting with Jacen, I'm like, God, that is Kevin Kiner doing really, really, really great work here. Yeah. So overall, that's and again, I know this is not a popular thing that people have accepted and or loving Mary Elizabeth's performance in this. It's just not quite connecting for me.
Fair enough. Michael, your thoughts on Hera, Huyang, CARSON TEVA, and Jacen here?
Yeah, I mean, agree that moment with Huyang at the beginning was just a beautiful, great moment. I mean, just the way it was shot, him holding the helmet, like everything about it was great. Loved it. I wasn't sure about Mary Elizabeth Winstead at the beginning. Her Hera didn't really like click with me, but she's grown on me. Now, I don't disagree with Shannon that I think the role that Hera has been given thus far in the show is in a lot of ways for an actor a little bit thankless.
Yes.
She's not, from a script standpoint, she wasn't given those lovely lines that Shannon just gave us to say. So she doesn't get to say them, she doesn't get to get down on her knee and say, I can't hear it, Jacen, but I know that you can, because she wasn't given those lines. So I think that Hera has been given the lion's share of like exposition. Let's talk about where the New Republic is right now. And I think she's doing the best she can with it, but I don't think that it's doing her any favors. I think it's all necessary stuff, but I really want to see Hera have like some big thing. I want to see her go up against some senators. Like I just really want to see her have more to do. But that being said, I've really settled into accepting her as Hera Syndulla in live action. I think she is doing a nice job. I really am enjoying her. I think it's just all lovely, solid stuff, and I would like to give her more to do. The Jacen stuff was great. Just the concept of saying I'm listening to the waves and I hear the clashing of lightsabers, because those two noises are so close to each other. Like it is such a beautiful moment. And to Shannon's point, I mean, like Star Wars, when John Williams scored that thing in 1977, they did all of these leitmotifs, which is, a musical term for like just themes that come back over and over again. So when you're using the Force, here's the Force theme. When Han and Leia are in love, here's the Han and Leia love theme. And so Star Wars is made of all these leitmotifs. And I think what Kiner does very smartly is that he doesn't rely, throughout Clone Wars and Rebels and everything else, he's not relying on John Williams all the time. Right. In fact, most of the time he avoids it, so that when he does go in to one of those leitmotifs, when he does go into one of those themes, it's a really important moment. And when Hera and Jacen are standing there listening to the crashing of the waves and the clashing of the lightsabers, and that Force leitmotif comes in, whew, that is like, hairs on your arm, stand up Star Wars nerd moment. So that was really great. Like we said beforehand, CARSON TEVA being like, yeah, okay, Force, Adam, let's go, let's do it again, get in the X-Wings. Like, I just really enjoy him sort of being this just sort of man on the ground in the middle of all of this crazy shit that's going on. And Chopper continues to be a chaotic little droid that I think is going to kill somebody at some point. So, all of it was really lovely. I love the mention of Senator Organa. Yes. I love, it's the constant struggle, and it will continue to be the constant struggle with this era of Star Wars, is that we know that Luke is off with his temple, and we did get to see him in Boba Fett. We know that Leia is one of the important members of this new republic that's being built, and we're always going to want to see them, but then we don't want to see them. And then if we do see them, we're going to argue that the CG was horrible, or that it was inappropriate, or the person that they cast as Leia isn't as good as Carrie. Like, it's just any choice you make to do it is probably going to be horrible, but there's always that desire. So the mention of her was great. And yeah, the New Republic is still just struggling to figure out how to make a democracy work in a galaxy. Like we'll see, but they are going to continue to struggle, and hopefully they get their shit together just in time for this Filoni movie, and they can all get together and fight off Thrawn.
Apparently, they've got an oversight committee. My God, am I sick of hearing that term over the last few months. But yeah, this whole situation I thought was, and I agree with Shannon and Michael, what you said. I think Mary Elizabeth is a phenomenal actress, but I also think she's one of these actors that is like, how can I say this? It's dependent on the director and the script of how good she can showcase herself to be, right? Like, I liken a little bit of this performance to her performance as the Huntress in Birds of Prey. Also kind of flat, also not that dynamic. Everyone else was much more dynamic in their roles in that movie. And she's kind of like the chill anchor, even though she had an insane backstory for Huntress and obviously has a pretty insane backstory here for the experiences that she's been on in Star Wars. But there's a calm delivery. And maybe they need that because everyone else is doing their things. She has to be kind of like the straight man to everything else. And so, or straight woman rather, to everything else. And so be it. But yes, I agree. I would like more. I would like them to give Hera more to do here. And I was watching some scenes from Clone Wars last night and this morning with Hera, and Vanessa Marshall's performance is just like that energy is so on point and you understand it and where it's coming from. It's that combination of empathy and a soldier's ability to do what needs to be done in certain moments, but also a love and care and empathy for the people around her. So she's flashed that in certain moments, but they also haven't set her up to really show that in certain moments. And so maybe she's not one of these actresses that's going to give you the layers underneath in the quiet moments in between the lines. And you kind of want to see that with something like Hera. So maybe down the road, as Michael said, they'll give her more to do as these next 3 episodes go along. Love the Jacen stuff. I'm now on board with this. I was not 100% on board. It was like, oh, here's Star Wars throwing in a kid again. Got to appeal to the young people. But I like how they're doing this. I like how they're processing this and making it go forward. And the kid's not annoying to me, which I think really helps. And he's doing this thing and communing with it. And maybe as you guys were talking, it occurred to me, well, if he can hear the lightsabers, then maybe this did happen. It's not a dream in Ahsoka's mind. It's not this thing. Because if he can hear it, maybe it actually did happen. And he's connecting with some level of it. And I like that they make it somewhat not fully real, but possibly real. And I kind of like that overall for Jacen. And I like that he's still a kid, even though he's communing with the Force. He's not unsettled by it. He's like very much like, this is the deal. You got to listen to me. He's not screaming at his mom to listen to him. He's like, no, you have to understand what I'm saying and blah, blah, blah. The Jacen stuff, I mean, the Huyang stuff is really great. Very moving. I actually like that scene. So I disagree with you, Shannon. I like that scene in the cockpit. And when he says to her, like, no, you do things your own way because you care about people. And that's why people like you. I'm telling you right now, they need to create a Huyang doll for every fucking situation. So you can just hit that button and it says something to you that you need to get through your day. Because that line, and Winstead's reaction, I thought was really genuine, really good as Hera kind of hearing that. Because how many people actually compliment Hera? Probably not. They just think she's such a badass that she doesn't need it. But here's Huyang kind of delivering the heart and soul line of the show to her, which I thought worked really, really well as well. And yes, Carson Teva, the MVP of all these recent Star Wars series, just showing up at the right time with the right amount of, okay, let's do this. I love that kind of matter of fact, blue collar, grounded type of approach to this mystical shit. He's just kind of dealing with it and rolling with it and actually does care. And so I think that's an important thing too as well. All right, well, let's take a quick break and then we'll get into the last section of the show here and we'll wrap up our spoiler review of episode 5 of Ahsoka.
Bum, 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 bum.
One last thing we should mention, I love that Huyang and Hera have the conversation about Ahsoka's master. So apparently Hera doesn't have that much knowledge of Anakin, I guess, because or that Anakin became Vader and was the master of Ahsoka, because Huyang just goes, well, he was tenacious. Let's just say that, tenacious.
Yeah,
so,
intense.
Most
yes,
people,
right.
I mean, this is just a little fun fact that people should keep in mind. And the wonderful novel, and you've brought it up before, John, Bloodlines really makes this clear. Like,
well, that's great. Yeah,
Vader being Anakin Skywalker is not like,
public
they
knowledge.
didn't have Fox News and CNN. Like, they weren't blasting it to everybody. Like, it is not a known thing. Like, certain people, like, obviously Luke and Leia know it. Han knows it. Ahsoka knows it. Baylan Skoll clearly knows because he kind of mentions it. But this isn't, like, wide knowledge. And, by the time that Hera met Ahsoka as Fulcrum, kind of organizing pockets of the rebellion, like, she knows that Ahsoka is part of the rebellion. She knows that Ahsoka's a former Jedi, but doesn't know a bunch of details, and nor would she know a ton unless Kanan had told her about how awesome Anakin Skywalker was. But Kanan didn't even know that that Anakin had become Vader. So I think we all sometimes take our knowledge of all Star Wars and be like, oh yeah, so everybody found out about that, and that's not common information at this point in the galaxy.
Yeah, I like that they have that. All right, so let's head back to this I'm going to read because I want to make sure I get everything right. She wakes back up. Ahsoka wakes back up on her ship. Huyang tells her it was Jacen who saved her. Huyang tells her Sabine is not there, and they're hoping she could tell them what happened. She walks out to Jacen, Hera, and Chopper. She hugs Jacen. This is a much more warmer, open, loving Ahsoka than we'd gotten in the first 4 episodes, and you can see that she's changed by this experience in the world between worlds with Anakin. Huyang takes or they pass Jacen off to Huyang, who takes him into the starship, and funny conversations about lightsabers, about training, Jedi training, all of this stuff. Hera wants to know where Sabine is. Ahsoka says Sabine might have left a memory on the map so they can know what happened. Now she becomes Prince Humperdinck, walks in, channels the memory, which is apparently a not that well-known power. What does it say, Mike?
Well, Force Echoes, which is not that well known unless you play Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order, and then you get Force Echoes all the time. So you're like, hey, Ahsoka must have a PlayStation because she knows how to do that.
They call it psychometry, is what she's channeling there, and as Michael mentioned, it's in both of those video games for sure. And then she knows that Sabine gave Balin the map to Ezra to get to Ezra. Hera wants to know where she is, and Ahsoka says it's not that simple to find out where she is. Teva shows up, says the fleet is coming there and that Hera's in trouble. She tells Ahsoka to work on finding Sabine. Hera does. She hears and sees the Purrgil in the sky, which is a beautiful foreshadowing of what we're going to get in just a few moments. We cut to the ghost, and Hera's talking to Mon Mothma. She says the Oversight Committee is going to decide if her command will be permanently terminated, and they need to come back and testify about her actions. Oh, God, where have I heard that episode? Ahsoka walks in and says she knows how to find Sabine. They all take off, which is, again, I write, such an awesome visual. Just seeing all the Star Wars ships in the skies taking off from a planet. I always love that shit. Ahsoka is fully Ahsoka the White. They head to the Purrgil. Such an awesome visual of the whales flying by and then all of them in the sky. They spot the mother Purrgil there, and Ahsoka walks out onto the wing to speak to it. I wrote the score here as the massive Purrgil appears in front of her is so great. The fleet, the new Republic fleet shows up and approaches, and Teva delays Captain Gerard because she wants to know what Ahsoka and Hera are up to, and he's like, all right, you're not going to believe me, but I'll tell you. She threatens to strip him of his rank. He says, okay, does it. Jacen tells them Jacen watches Ahsoka, and she mentions the end of Star Wars Rebels here. Does Hera with Jacen there talking about it. They sent them far, far away. Ahsoka communes with the Purrgil and looks like she's gotten through, and they go inside the whale like Pinocchio going inside a monstro. Huyang wants to know if they actually know where Ezra went. Sabine says she doesn't know, but she's going to flow with it and see where this thing takes her. The space whales fly alongside the fleet as it moves out of the way in space, which I think is a pretty awesome sequence. And we see the Purrgil getting ready to jump. Hera and Jacen and Chopper can't go. Great exchange between the both of them here. Very similar to Lando and Han, I think, in Return of the Jedi, or at the end of Empire Strikes Back there. No, it's Jedi, yeah. And then says, and then Hera says, may the Force be with you, which I thought she delivered it really, really well in that moment. Ahsoka promises that she'll find them, and they take off. So that's the end of the episode. Mike, your thoughts on these final moments here with Ahsoka becoming Ahsoka the White, channeling what happened with Sabine, and then the Oversight Committee stuff going on, the New Republic stuff, and then the Purrgil communing with Ahsoka.
I mean, I wonder now, looking back, I wonder if there were some things they could have done in those early episodes that made it clear that Ahsoka's dourness or seriousness was very specific to the situation. Because I think there was a lot of people that were like, is this what live action Ahsoka is? Like, I don't know. But that being said, the payoff, and you said it, from the moment that she hugs Jacen, the payoff of the end of this episode and seeing such a radical shift in her is great. It's a great, great payoff. And from the moment that she saw, I mean, they are going for it. They so much so that actually I was reading this online. It at the end of Rebels, Ahsoka, when she shows up to Sabine, the shot that the shot they basically did like shot for shot in live action. In Rebels, she's wearing a white cloak.
Right. Yes.
So they'd been like, oh, and so the one thing they retconned when they did this in live action is that when Ahsoka shows up to Sabine, she's in a gray cloak. Because they were like, oh, wait, we want to actually tell this whole Ahsoka the White story. So she's in a gray cloak in the live action, and then she's always in gray. I mean, I think she's even in gray in Mandalorian. Like, they really, like, grayed her up. And then to have her wake up, even if when you watch it, when she's on the ship in the bed, it's dark out, and then they sort of just bring the light in. So you literally see her go from darkness into light. We all get to see bald Ahsoka for the first time.
I know, that was weird. Yeah, it's like,
bald Ahsoka. Bald Ahsoka is a thing now. And, you know, she gets up, and the second that she comes out of the ghost, she sort of has this white thing wrapped around her. And the change in her is dramatic. She is all of a sudden, you're like, oh my gosh, this is Ahsoka. Yeah. There she is. Like it really, really hit great. Her doing the Force, I just love they're doing Force echoes because like it just makes me want to go dive back into Jedi Survivor. And it like I love that they've really kind of brought that piece of what they did in the game out and be like, yep, okay, let's really double down on this. Kind of to what Shannon was saying earlier about how beautiful the lightsaber battle in the World Between Worlds was and how it felt like it was shot for the big screen. Just some of these shots, Ahsoka looking up at the Purrgil and like everything that happened, like it's so cinematic in a way that sometimes Star Wars TV, particularly with the volume, is not. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. And this is one of those times that it really, really is. And just the joy of all of these moments, like them flying up into that Purrgil, the pod of Purrgils, and her getting out onto the edge of the ship and finding that giant, like everything was so gorgeous. Kevin Kiner was just going for it with the score. And Ahsoka's so calm and peaceful about the whole thing, and all of the back and forth between her and Huyang. She's like, hey, get in there. He's like, all right, well, you get in here first. Like, there was a level of fun and play to all of it that was so satisfying. And even to what you're saying about Carson Teva being like, they're like, hey, we're gonna tractor beam you in, and you're gonna get in trouble. And he's like, okay, like, oh god, this is gonna be a hell of a week, guys. Like, it was all so, it just felt so magical in that Star Wars kind of way. And then just seeing that pod of Purrgil kind of come out, and just go around those ships, and the reaction of everybody on those ships as this pod of whales is flying around them. And it just was this great. And then to your point, I think Ahsoka being like, yeah, he's like, do you know where we're going to go? She's like, no idea. No clue. And he's like, well, we could go anywhere. And she's like, it's better than going nowhere. Like, it's just okay, this is my Ahsoka, like Ahsoka the White. I am here for her. And then to your point, you know, Star Wars throws "May the Force be with you" around a whole lot because it's their bread and butter. And sometimes it doesn't land great. Sometimes you're like, okay, it feels a little cheesy. And Hera saying "May the Force be with you" before they take off in that pod of hyperspace whales, like that was like, yep, that was the moment. That was right. And so this whole ending, just the score, the way it was shot, Ahsoka the White, like all of it just feels so satisfying that our friend Jonathan Gabay on one of our text chains was like, this could have been a season finale. Yeah. Had this been the season 100%. Finale and this had been the end of it, and we knew that in season 2 we were going to get to this galaxy far, far away, would have been totally fine with that. And the fact that, we talk about this a lot, it's one of John's complaints with a lot of the Marvel shows, is that we get to the halfway point or so, and you're like, I feel like I don't know these characters. I don't know, like there's so much left. To get to this moment and know that we have 3 episodes left, I'm like, butter my popcorn, bitches, because I am ready to rock. Like, let's go. So I just thought the whole back half of this episode just felt so good.
Yeah. Yeah, if they hadn't teased Thrawn or Ezra, you could have actually had this as a season finale. Absolutely. Absolutely. But because they did, people would be up in arms if this was the end. Shannon, your thoughts here on these final moments with Ahsoka the White, who has come to us at the turning of the tide.
Seeing the change in Ahsoka, there was a little bit of a satisfied vindication looking at the first half of the season when people are like, man, she's really dour. And it's just like, yeah, this is a different person. Like, time has passed. Like she's seen some shit. And so when you do get that glimpse of the Ahsoka that we're more acquainted with from the animated series, it's like, hey, okay, haha. way to hold the line. Agreed. The whole section with the Purrgil was just kind of magical.
Yeah.
And to what Vogel already said, referencing what I had said, the cinematic nature, when you see that big mama whale kind of come up through the clouds, like that was just, again, just really kind of magical filmmaking. I thought it was so funny as the fleet comes in and Hera tells Carson, they can't come in, that's gonna disturb the pod. As he goes in and is telling the captain to identify herself. I was like, that's really funny. Like, I don't know if that Rangers of the New Republic show is gonna happen, but man, I really hope it does with Carson Teva, Cobb Vanth, and Zeb. I was like, I would love to see that trio together. I think that would be
greenlit.
I think that would be a lot of fun. As we see the Purrgil, kind of leaving the planet into space, and the captain says, "Get clear of their path," and they immediately go into their path. I thought was really, really funny. That was maybe one of those lines I would have gotten rid of because the kind of majesty of watching these enormous animals fly by your ship. It's like, again, would have been such a great moment on the big screen. And for the uninitiated, trying to explain what Purrgil are. And so as Hera said, they're getting ready to jump. And yes, Mary Elizabeth Winstead's "May the Force be with you" tears. Like that was great. But as their tentacles start to kind of light up before they make the jump to hyperspace. My wife's like, wait. They can go into hyperspace. I'm like, well, yeah. So yeah, that's actually what they think they based ships being able to go into hyperspace from, was following them. She was like, oh, okay. I mean, watching the acceptance was really, really nice. And as the credits rolled, I mean, again, Kevin Kiner's score throughout this one was just so good. Yeah. As the credits rolled, I was crossing my fingers. I'm like, are we going to get a little post-credit scene? That would be really, and didn't happen. No. But overall, the episode was fantastic.
Yeah, I like these last few moments, and they didn't feel cheesy or tacked on. They felt earned. Like we had been through these 4 episodes, and that's the thing. Sometimes in our culture now, and I get it because we do it. Like we have questions because we do episode by episode reviewing things rather than letting them build an understanding. I mean, I don't want to bring up the Zack Snyder 5 film plan for Superman, but let it go. This idea that we were going to see the dark Ahsoka, who had been dealing with the trauma of the guilt of Anakin and all this other stuff, she had to come to terms with it. And aren't we all, when we're dealing with that stuff in periods of our life, and we all go through stuff where we are in periods of our life trying to navigate emotional stuff that's going on, we are a bit gray. We are not as happy as usual. We're not our brighter selves. And so once we come to terms with it, with therapy or reading a book or figuring out what's going on or getting closure, there's a lightness there. You're able to access these feelings of care and love much more easily. And you see that when she hugs Jacen, bends down to Jacen to talk to him, there's a real sense of like she's let go of the weight of what all that stuff was and is much more flowing with the Force, and going with it. And I love that. And all that we get here with her throughout talking to Huyang, smirking at Huyang when he's like worried about her. And of course, Huyang has to be who he is. You may have changed. I'm still very much who I am. So it's a good balance to have on the ship even more. And then at the end with her and Hera, I thought that was one of the genuine moments of connection between them in the back and forth that I thought that I really liked. And Carson Teva, and I agree with you, Shannon. I said this last night on my instant reaction. I want this Rangers of the New Republic, because someone asked if Zeb's going to show up. And I was like, well, Zeb, I can't imagine Zeb showing up when they're out there with hyper. But with Teva, because Teva mentions a Delphi base, and that's where we saw Zeb in the Mandalorian season 3. That's a real possibility. I would not have an issue with a Jacen, Hera, Teva, Zeb, and who was the other person you mentioned?
Cobb Vanth.
Rangers of the Republic. I'm totally fine. I'm also fine if you recast Cara Dune and bring a new actress in to play that, and let's go, because that's certainly been done before. So I'm 100% down with that idea. if that's what they're launching out of this. I'm all in for it. So just lovely way to end the episode. And hopefully people who are maybe dealing with stuff or struggling with stuff found some lessons coming out of this episode to maybe take a look at some of the stuff and figure out ways to deal with it so they can have some closure and feel some lightness. And I like that about Star Wars, always encouraging you to walk towards the light. We may love the dark characters, but we enjoy the overall message of walking to the light. All right, any final words here as we wrap up, gentlemen? I know we're over an hour now, so we should wrap up. Mike, Shannon, any final things we missed or you guys you want to say?
We have 3 more episodes, and AHSOKA is on her way. We are about to see, I think, a galaxy in Star Wars we've never ever seen before. Things gonna be heating up with Hera and the New Republic without AHSOKA there to have her back. And I usually at this point in these limited series where we have 6 to 8 episodes, I'm getting a little bit like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna have to wrap it up. And I'm thrilled. These next 3 episodes are gonna be a wild fucking ride.
Yeah. Shannon, any final words?
Yeah, the fact that all of the marketing and the trailers was from this first section of episodes.
Yeah.
We don't know what's coming the next 3, and conceivably we could get content that would fit in a 2-hour movie in the next 3.
Right.
So that's very exciting.
I agree. We haven't seen any of the Thrawn scenes from the trailers yet, so that's probably the only thing that we've seen ahead of time. But everything else is going to be new, and it's going to be fascinating to see how they paint, they fill in the gaps. Yeah.
That's going to be the last 2 minutes of the last episode.
Probably, for sure. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for episode 5, Shadow Warrior, from writer-director Dave Filoni of AHSOKA. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this review. We appreciate it madly. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's at @geek_buddies, on Instagram at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung, on Instagram at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it is at MKToon. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Well, we clearly love talking about this, and we love that you enjoy listening to us talk about it. And so if you would like to hear us continue to talk about it, which we're going to do a whole lot, here is what you can do for us. You can smash that like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, check out all the amazing content he's got over there, leave your comments below. What did you think of the World Between Worlds? AHSOKA and Anakin, Purrgil flying through the air, Hera and the New Republic. Let us know all your thoughts below in the comments. Let's talk about it. What do you think we're going to be seeing in the next 3 episodes? If you are listening to us on a podcast, go ahead and leave us some stars and some comments so we go up in the rankings and more people can find us. And as always, the best thing that you can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
There you go. And don't forget, we got our main show coming up later on this week, so look out for that as well. So thank you so much for watching or listening to us on this review for sure. And until next time, we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you next time on another brand new spoiler review episode here of AHSOKA on the
Geek
Buddies.